So you want to talk about a backyard brawl and a rivalry. Two schools in the same conference, 65 miles away. It's a little bit like Southern Cal and UCLA in that they're next door neighbors and all their kids know each other. So that adds, I think, to the emotional aspect of it, to the rivalry aspect of it, and there is. I mean, the state of Florida, all the schools, they've got a chance to have really, really good football program.
One of the most fun weeks of the season, a showdown up I-95 this Saturday night. FIU and FAU meet once again. AJ Ricketts, play-by-play voice of the Panthers. This week we preview the rivalry that carries conference implications, discuss the mentality of the team, bouncing back from ODU, the lessons Butch Davis carried over from the NFL to college football, all that and more on episode 3 of Panther Talk with Butch Davis. Well, another gorgeous day in Miami, mid-November, temps in the low 80s. Gotta love it. South Florida, we're all looking forward to a big game in Boca this Saturday. We'll chat that and much more on this week's episode of Panther Talk with Butch Davis. And Coach, a last-second heave, an opportunity for the team to win, a thrilling finish. The touchdown drive with under 90 seconds to go, the onside kick from Jose. Your team gave themselves an opportunity. Yeah. And when we were chatting after the game, when we chatted this morning after practice, you love the resiliency from the team this season. They never quit.
Yeah, that's one of the great things about this team, AJ, is that they show up every single Saturday and they spill their heart out there trying to play as hard as they possibly can. We didn't play as well as we needed to play. There was a lot of things that occurred during the course of the game that obviously we'd love to have over. The turnovers that we committed, some of the penalties, some of the missed tackles, and we could never kind of get under control and keep them off balance. I thought we were about to flip the entire momentum in the game in the third quarter. We held them to 38 yards. We started scoring. We were answering some of the drives and flipping the field position on them. And then in the fourth quarter, we had some turnovers that just really stole those possessions. In the second half, you're going to at best maybe get 5, 6, maybe 7 possessions, and you can't afford to turn the ball over twice. But I do, as you said, AJ, a little earlier, I'm very proud of the fact that the kids did not stop competing. At the end of the game, when you're down and you're like, oh, maybe we don't have any kind of a chance, and every single Saturday you watch across the nation, somebody throws a Hail Mary, whether it's in the NFL or college football, and they win a game. And when we drove down, we scored. We got the onside kick. Jose Borgales did just an absolutely fantastic job. The kick was great. The players executed the blocks on guys and diving in. Tony Gator got the football for us and gave us a chance with to potentially execute maybe 3 plays and get the ball down there and throw it in the end zone. And who knows, maybe you out-jump them, you come down with one.
It seemed, and I was talking with Hurley Brown in the booth, in that first half, it just seemed really apparent those little things that all added up, from the 70 yards of penalties in that first half, which was the game average, which was only in the first half, and the couple of dropped passes. What was your message at the half? You said it was like a lot of self-inflicted things throughout.
Completely, AJ. I mean, that's the big part of it is that we're not playing up to the level of the expectations that we've set for ourselves.
Standard,
I mean, you just can't, regardless of the opponent, whether the opponent is 14 points favored over you or an underdog to you, it doesn't make any difference. I mean, we got to go out and we got to play much, much better than that. And, we've got to come out. We got to create our own excitement.
Sure.
If the excitement isn't present in the crowd or whatever, we got to create our own, and we got to play better. And I think our players, the one thing that we've talked about all season long, AJ, with these kids is that, every game is a learning opportunity. And, whether you win or whether you lose, you better learn something from that game. You better learn some stuff about you. And this week's practice and this week's performance this week against FAU, we'll have a lot of statements about, who we want to be as a football program.
It was a gutty effort from Alex Magoo. He's your mind, the player of the game in that day. Second highest passing yardage in his career. His 300-plus yard game, 2 touchdowns. I mean, he was gritty.
Well, let me just tell you something. He could have been well over 400 yards. He was a victim of 5 drops during the course of the game, and some of those drops weren't just 5-yard hitches. I mean, a couple of them were 15, 20, 25 yards down the field where the receiver's wide open and we just dropped the ball. Yeah. And those could have been explosive plays. Those could have led to potentially, because one of them was down at the 25-yard line, one was at the 35-yard line, plus past the 50-yard line. You never know. Those 2 catches, you complete those, that's a potential 14-point swing.
Yeah. Yeah, another guy we chatted this morning, looked throughout the year, we've talked about Bryce Singleton, Devontae Price, two of the young guys, now Shamar Thornton, that 13-yard touchdown grab. He's a guy that transferred to Hallandale from Carroll City, heading into his senior season, had 32 catches, 441 yards his senior year, and he chose FIU over a couple Power 5 programs, and now he's played the last 2 games. What have you liked out of him in practice? What has he shown you to earn those reps and targets the past 2 games?
Well, one thing, for any freshman, for the most part, to get a chance to play early in your career, like those kids that you just referenced, they've got to work hard in practice to learn all the offense, to earn the trust of the quarterback and earn the trust of the coaches, to be able to, like, you know what, we put you in a game, it could be the game's on the line. You've got to come up with game playing type of performances. And those kids, the way they practice, the way they study, the way they are in meetings, and they've earned the opportunity to get in and get opportunities to play. And the catch that Shamir had for the touchdown down there was no doubt in anybody's mind, because Alex Magoo chose him, a true freshman, down there in the red zone to throw to. He knew he could trust him. He knew he was going to make the play and make the catch. It was a great route, the way in which he ran the route, and it was just a fantastic throw. I mean, Alex, one of the things that I've loved about Alex this year is that he throws balls that sometimes they're 50-50, but a lot of times they're 90%. We're going to catch them or nobody's going to catch them. And I love his accuracy, the way in which he throws the football.
On the national ABC broadcast this past weekend, Chris Fowler and Kirk, both of them referencing the state of Florida FBS schools. The resurgence, not just of FIU, but UCF, Miami, and, of course, this week's opponent, FAU. This is year 1 for so many of us here, but it's obvious right out of the gates that the FIU versus FAU is a significant game for both of these two programs. And between what Lane's done this year, what you've done here, it's a great opportunity for exposure while looking to earn win number 7.
Sure. Yeah. Well, AJ, I mean, obviously, the state of Florida produces so many unbelievable high school football athletes, and all of the schools in this state have an opportunity to recruit a lot of those kids. And there's so many guys on our football team, AJ, that have either been teammates with or they have competed against the kids at FAU. So you want to talk about a backyard brawl and a rivalry, 2 schools in the same conference, 65 miles away. It's a little bit like Southern Cal and UCLA in that they're next door neighbors and all their kids know each other. So that adds, I think, to the emotional aspect of it, to the rivalry aspect of it, and there is. I mean, the state of Florida, all the schools, they've got a chance to have really, really good football programs.
It's a team that's scored 30-plus points in 8 straight games, but it seems like your defense loves playing these types of offenses that are explosive.
Well, I'd like to play teams that can't score a lick. Those are the ones I'd like to be playing.
That's true.
But I mean, in today's offensive football, I mean, most of the teams have got good skilled kids. I mean, if they have a quarterback that can get the ball in the hands of really gifted wide receivers and running backs and tight ends, they've got a chance to score. And that's a national trend all across the country. And if you are fortunate enough to hold somebody, which we have, during the course of the season, to 7 points or to low scores and not let them get into 20-plus points and stuff, you give yourself a great chance to potentially win the football game.
Building a program, building a culture, we've talked about it at some points, your previous stops and what was done. What's happening right now, 6-3, obviously a terrific start, but even if it hadn't been a great start, you've had moments where you can draw from adversity in the past. I know you probably don't want me to bring it up, but that 1989 season in Dallas, 1-15, that was, I imagine, one of your toughest challenges in coaching, just to get through that season. But when you're not getting those wins, but you're trying to build a culture, I know you're the defensive coordinator, you weren't the head coaching spot, but you're still a big part of building that culture.
Sure.
And you have that adversity, how do you still continue to build? And what did you draw from that season moving forward? Because what resulted after, a lot of it sits in this office, some Super Bowl rings.
Well, and to be honest with you, some of that actually occurred. Obviously, the Dallas 1-15, North Carolina, we were 4-8 in year 1 there. And they'd had 7 losing seasons in the previous 8. And eventually we flipped that program around to where we were able to beat Florida State and Clemson and Tennessee and had some great wins. Virginia Tech on a Thursday night, beat some really, really high-profile programs. And what you really do, AJ, in seasons in year number 1 is you're trying to build a high level of expectation of the way in which not only do you prepare, but the way in which you perform and play on Saturdays. And, I go back to that 1-15 season, and I can remember in Game 16, the last game of the season, I think we maybe lost by maybe 7 or 8 or 9 points, and the kids in that game played their hearts out. They played as if the Super Bowl was on the line. And when you have kids that love to compete and their pride means something to them, then you know that you got a chance. You got one of the foundational blocks to build on, and that's one of the things about these kids. I know their hearts are hurting for the way in which they played last week. That doesn't describe who they think that they want to be looked at as a football team and a football program and as an individual. And so, then it means something to them. I mean, if kids are giggling and laughing after a loss, and because if losing doesn't hurt, then it probably doesn't really mean anything to you.
And you got that sense I got that sense speaking with the players at practice today that they're focused and hurting after that game against Old Dominion. I referenced Dallas in that 1-15 season. Just in your time in Dallas and your time with Cleveland, what lessons, what principles have you tried to carry over and your head coaching stints at Carolina and FIU since then? What values from the NFL or coaching philosophies have you taken to the college game?
Well, I mean, I think one of the biggest ones, AJ, is that all the great teams, the national championship teams at Miami and the teams at North Carolina, the playoff team in Cleveland, and the Super Bowl teams in Dallas, the telltale sign that you had turned the corner was when the team takes ownership of its own performance, that you don't have to set the standard for discipline. They set it. You don't have to set the level of how hard we're going to practice. They set it. How they work in the off season. They set it. How much investment that they're going to go and watch film and study on their own. Not when the coaches ask them to, but when they take the ownership of like, you know what, I want to be the best prepared that I can be this Saturday. When they take that, that's singly probably the biggest thing. And then obviously a culture where ego and pride is out the window. This is about a team sport. When the team wins, there's glory for everybody. Quit worrying about how many catches you had, how many touches you had, how many yards you rushed for, how many tackles, how many sacks. Don't worry about it. If we win, that's all that really matters. And because when you start to pout and you start to worry about how much I'm playing and somebody else is playing more, then you ought to go play an individual sport. You should be a tennis player, and you should be you should play some other sport. Play golf. Where you don't have teammates. And but if you're going to be on a team sport, you better be all in about making the devotion about teamwork.
Coach, obviously a very big game this weekend, and an early birthday surprise in the office today. I see the balloons are around here.
Well, the best recruit I ever got in my entire life is my wife, Tammy, and I love her to death, and she just, you can just about count on the fact that she's going to try to embarrass you at some point during your birthday week by getting balloons and those kinds of things. Yeah. But I love the fact that, she remembers every single special moment, and I love that about her.
If she donated some food to the office as well, I'll help you finish that off. The balloons go good next to the Super Bowl trophy as well. I have to say that. Coach, appreciate the time. Happy early birthday, and best of luck against FA.
Thank you, AJ.